This is episode 271 of Jumblethink.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview amazing people about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is Bianca Caban. More about Bianca in a moment. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you haven't subscribed to Jumblethink, right now is the best time to do it. So head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink, and click that magical subscribe button. Now let's join our conversation with today's guest, Bianca Caban. Hey there, welcome to Jumblethink. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get rolling, we want to take a moment and thank our sponsors, Penji, your source for unlimited graphic design at one low monthly rate. Head on over to Penji, PENJI.co, that's .co. Use the code JUMBLE and you're going to get 15% off your first month as a Jumblethink listener. We also want to thank North American TEFL. If you've ever dreamed about teaching English as a foreign language, they are the place to connect. They can help you get the certification you need so you can teach English abroad. You can learn more about them at NorthAmericanTEFL.com. Now, today's guest is Bianca Caban. Bianca is the Managing Director of SheWorx, a global community of over 20,000 plus female founders. SheWorx is part of Republic. Republic is a fundraising platform for startups and blockchain projects. Before joining Republic and SheWorx, Bianca worked on Wall Street for companies like Credit Suisse, BlackRock, and Atlas Merchant Capital, where she conducted business in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Today's show was recorded live at Podcast Row, hosted by Stand Up New York in New York City. Now let's go ahead and jump into our conversation with today's guest, Bianca Caban. We have Bianca Caban from Republic and SheWorx here with us today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
I'm excited to chat with you. We're friends with Kendrick and Chuck and Ben and a whole bunch of other people over at Republic. Our listeners are very familiar with Republic. We've had a lot of their startups on there. Tell us a little bit about your role in Republic.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm at Republic, and I actually am now leading our female founder community called SheWorx,
okay,
which we just acquired. And before that, I was leading partnerships at Republic. So I continue to work with partners, including VCs, accelerators, ecosystem builders, essentially on deal flow. I'm bringing more top quality tech deals to our platform.
Wow. Very cool. Now, you have a very long history of the world of business. You've been at Republic for a while now, but before that, you worked on Wall Street. So tell us a little bit about your journey of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So as you said, as you mentioned, I started my career on Wall Street here in New York at Credit Suisse. And at the time, I was a sell-side research analyst covering U.S. asset manager stocks. So started off in a very sort of analytical role and learned a ton about capital markets in that role, and went on to work at BlackRock in a more business analytics and strategy role. And then I worked at a merchant bank called Atlas Merchant Capital and helped them launch one of their first investment vehicles,
wow,
which was investing in companies and banks specifically in sub-Saharan Africa. So that was really a very pivotal kind of time for me in my career where for the first time, I was exposed to doing business in emerging markets in sub-Saharan Africa. And I had the opportunity to travel quite a bit to the continent, to Africa, Europe, and the Middle East in that role. And it opened up my eyes to the tremendous potential of that economy, of economies in Africa. And I learned a lot about how those economies were kind of growing through investment in technology, investment in young entrepreneurs, in women, and was super inspired by that and kind of essentially gave me the inspiration to work on a couple of my own entrepreneurial endeavors. And at the time, one of the things that I did was I launched a consultancy where I was trying to attract capital from New York, from family offices and VCs and high net worth individuals down to Puerto Rico, where my grandparents are from.
Okay.
And with the idea of bringing investment and capital and how, since I saw how powerful that could be in driving economic growth in places like Sub-Saharan Africa, I thought, how cool would it be to similarly do this in Puerto Rico? And so had a couple clients, both focused on exposing them to the opportunities in Puerto Rico, but also just because I had built a skill set of kind of business acumen, working on Wall Street, working on investment decks, et cetera. Did some other consulting work. And in the process met Kamal Ravikant, who was a client, now a mentor of mine. And he's a best-selling author and investor himself, and his brother started AngelList. And when I was in business school, fast forward, he said to me, you should really meet Kendrick Wen, the CEO of Republic. I think you guys would really hit it off. You have such similar, you're very values and mission aligned. Again, one of the things I had done when I was an entrepreneur was launching a nonprofit business accelerator for women-owned businesses in Puerto Rico, but also mainland US. And so I had really, and then also did some work, as I mentioned, for a couple of impact investing firms not related to Puerto Rico, and learned about gender lens investing. And so he said, basically, Republic encompasses all of your interests around kind of access to capital, investing in female founders, and a bunch of other things, fintech. And so that's how I ended up at Republic.
Wow, kind of crazy story there.
Yes.
It is an interesting time in the world of investment with the changes with legislation around how and who and what you can invest in.
Exactly.
So it's an exciting time because I think in some ways, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I probably am, that we're in America trying to catch up to some of what's happening in developing nations when it comes to technology and infrastructure and the ability to invest and really seed small amounts or even big amounts into amazing ideas, amazing concepts or dreams people have, and make that a reality. So tell us a little bit about the things that you learned from your time at working with what you were doing in Africa and then Puerto Rico. And through that journey, what you learned that we could actually take back here in the States and really say, you know, we have some ground to catch up, because these developing nations are a little bit more entrepreneurial friendly. They're a little bit more diverse in what they invest in, and the systems that we have in place actually can hamper that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So one kind of example to crystallize it a little bit was during my time working on Wall Street and working in Sub-Saharan Africa, I had the opportunity to hear from the president of Rwanda talk about how he was leveraging women to revitalize his economy from civil war only 20 years prior. And just Rwanda in general, when I was kind of working in those economies, was one of the fastest growing economies in Africa.
Oh, wow.
And some of the things that he was doing was laying fiber optic cable throughout the entire country so that Kigali could be a Wi-Fi zone, free Wi-Fi zone, the entire city, which is something that's, I think we're still trying to work on, even in New York.
Like, some cities have tried it, Philadelphia, and not succeeded.
Exactly.
So it's been something that we tried, but not done.
Yeah. And then other things where he would say, I need to leverage women to revitalize my economy because I can't afford to leave out 50% of the population. It's all hands on deck. So obviously it's good for social reasons to empower women, but also for him, it was almost like an economic imperative. And then, so his parliament has the largest percent of women in the world. It's 70% women.
Wow.
And that's another thing to learn from. And I think when I look at the U.S., what's really exciting, and American Express just came out with a report, is that women-owned businesses are the fastest growing group of businesses in the U.S.
Okay.
They're driving small business growth and thereby driving employment and revenue growth. Okay. And so I think if you kind of take a page from that book of invest, in emerging markets, investing in women as an asset class, how do we make sure that those businesses that are launching right now are reaching their full potential? So women are the fastest growing group of small businesses, women business owners, but they also do not reach that $1 million mark. So they're less likely, and they make up a small percentage of businesses that have reached or surpassed the $1 million revenue mark. So obviously there's a disconnect, and there's an opportunity here to say, how can we make sure that women-owned businesses have access to the capital, resources, and networks they need to get to that next level, which actually will drive the entire economy. Because if women have more money in their pockets, we do know that women spend that, or they spend the money in the household.
Yeah.
So they spend, they control most of household spending in the U.S., and they're making decisions on healthcare, on education, on consumer products. So if women have more money, they're going to spend more money and thereby increase the economic pie for everyone and drive the economy in the U.S. So I think that's one thing I learned in emerging markets, where it's like leveraging all people in society, women and men to grow as actually an economic opportunity. And there are all a bunch of other statistics around globally how women reinvest in their families 90% of their income versus men reinvest only 40% of their income. And again, that reinvestment is what's going to go back into the economy through spending. So it is really important to focus on making sure women are empowered. And again, they're driving business in this country anyway. So let's figure out ways to make sure they have the resources they need to succeed.
Yeah. Very cool. As we wrap up this first segment, I always ask these final three questions. The first one is, how are you personally finding purpose in what you do?
That's great. That's a great question. I think it comes down to, and I feel privileged to be able to match my kind of life purpose with my work.
Yeah.
I think not everyone is able to do that, so I feel very privileged to be able to. But for me, I think my purpose is really, how do I democratize access to capital? And that's kind of been built over time, starting my career on Wall Street and seeing the power of capital to drive growth, to create wealth.
Yeah.
And so then how do we open up that opportunity to more people?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've learned, and again, I feel privileged to have had access to great educational opportunities and business opportunities, but not everyone does. I grew up in New York City, and so I had a lot of amazing access. But what about entrepreneurs that are in the Midwest or in non-coastal cities? They are just as talented, because as we know, talented is equally distributed, but they don't have the opportunities that entrepreneurs in San Francisco or New York or Boston have. So to me, over time, I've cultivated this purpose of, how do I increase more opportunity and more educational opportunities, more access to capital opportunities to entrepreneurs across the country? Because I think, again, that's one way to really drive the economy forward and lift all of us up. But I guess that's a purpose that I've developed over time, just because of my personal opportunity that I've had. Yeah. And so how do I use technology to kind of distribute that opportunity? And so that's why, for me, Republic was such an interesting opportunity and a place for me to grow my career, because it is a platform. Yeah. So anybody can apply. You don't have to know someone. And you can apply as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection. You can be in Detroit. You can be in Columbus, Ohio. You can be in Austin, Texas, Nashville. It doesn't matter where you are. You can apply to have the opportunity to access capital from our community and your community. So I have been able to align my purpose and my profession, which I feel really lucky about. But that's kind of been the theme throughout my career.
Yeah. And what's one big challenge you're working to overcome in what you're doing?
That's a great question. So I think the biggest challenge is probably on a personal level, as it relates to really maintaining that balance, that work-life balance that you need to continue the day-to-day kind of work that I personally am so passionate about. How do you find kind of mental space? How do you find time for self-care? How do you find time to go to the gym? It's like those challenges, I think, for me it's kind of a constant battle of every single day is kind of a new battle of like, okay, am I going to get to the gym? Or like, I need to make time to meditate even though I am running late, or whatever it is. So I think the challenge is really around finding that balance where you have the mental space to kind of recharge. And so I again, as I mentioned, I've been trying to do things more like meditate. Also, I really enjoy reading fiction. So nothing that will kind of educate me or give me like tools to take on my day-to-day job, but just a place where my mind can escape and go somewhere else. And in some ways it's good to exercise that creative muscle. But I think that's been my biggest challenge. I don't know if you were talking about personal or professional, but on a personal level, just finding the balance. Professionally, I think or do you mean like
whatever
myself
you want
or
to
Republic?
Answer. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I think actually now in our acquisition of SheWorx, I've been giving a now new challenge to build out this female founder community.
Yeah.
And I think, and continue the great work that the founder, Lisa Wang, who's actually here today at Podcast Row, who continue the great work that she has done and built over the last few years in this kind of global 20K plus female founder community and ecosystem. And I think the challenge that we face at Republic and that I personally have been given the torch to continue on with is in, finding ways to add value to the community.
Yeah.
So through educational opportunities, through exposure to top investors, top entrepreneurs, and also building opportunities for the SheWorx community to connect with each other through peer mentorship. So I think that's a big challenge that I face now in terms of I have big shoes to fill with Lisa having passed along the torch to me. And I'm excited about it, but it is going to be a challenge moving forward.
And what's one big goal you have for the future of what you're building, your role at Republic?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one big goal, I would say the reason why I joined Republic was because I had worked on this problem of kind of increasing access to capital via the accelerator that I started, but that was at such a small scale. We launched with 8 founders, four based in Puerto Rico, 4 based in New York, and put together an amazing program, both virtual and in person, over 3 months. And that was amazing. And I saw the direct impact I had on those businesses where several of our founders actually connected to angel investors and got investment after having gone through our program. They were connected to opportunities in the legal fields and the PR fields. Several of them got amazing articles in Forbes, and all this brand awareness was built. And that was really exciting. But that was only 8 businesses and 8 founders.
Yeah.
And so I think one goal that I have being at Republic is how do I leverage some of that same kind of special opportunity that we curated for those 8 founders. How do we do that for hundreds of founders, thousands of founders, hundreds of thousands of founders?
Yeah.
And that's the exciting goal. So Republic, we're about 2.5 years in, actually 3 years in, but we started hosting campaigns about 6 months into launching. So we're about 2.5 years in running campaigns. We've hosted around 100 companies so far. How do we scale that?
Yeah.
And so the goal, I think, for me would be both in the work I'm doing at Republic, but also in SheWorx, just really scaling and reaching as many founders as possible across the country and world with access to capital and education to run their businesses.
Yeah, super cool. We will be right back with Bianca to go more into this conversation about diversity and funding and so much more. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Penji and over at NorthAmericanTEFL.com. Here is a little bit more about North American TEFL. Did you just graduate from university and you're not sure what step to take next? Or maybe you're looking for an exciting career transition. If you're interested in exploring the world while still earning income, you can teach English as a foreign language in one of a dozen countries across the world. From China to Colombia to Japan and beyond, if you want to get a work visa, most embassies and employers in the educational field require teachers to earn a certification in teaching English as a foreign language. For more information about how you can travel the world as a teacher and see exciting new places and even build a new career, visit NorthAmericanTEFL.com. That's NorthAmericanTEFL.com. We also want to thank our friends over at Penji. Penji helps startups, agencies, marketing teams, small businesses, big corporations, well, pretty much anyone that needs great graphic design achieve more with unlimited graphic design support at one flat monthly rate. Their easy-to-use online platform pairs you with a professional designer and lets you create as many design projects as you want. Think of it as your monthly subscription to top-notch design with no contracts, no hourly billing, just fast, simple, and affordable graphic design for all of your needs. And because you are a listener of Jumblethink, they're doing something super cool. You can visit Penji, PENJI.co. Use the code JUMBLE, and you're going to get 15% off your first month. So head on over, use the code JUMBLE, visit Penji.co, and get 15% off your first month. Now let's return to our conversation with today's guest, Bianca Caban. We are back with Bianca. All right. Before we get going, I know most of our listeners, well, a lot of them at least, know about Republic and they know how to find it. But can you remind them, just in case they may have not heard it before or forgot?
Sure. So you can find us at republic.co.
Okay.
And that's where you'll access all the exciting opportunities that are currently raising and learn more about our team. There's also really exciting opportunities to learn. We have something called the Journal, which is our blog. We go through how to hack angel investing, different investor education pieces. So it's a great opportunities beyond learning about investments to go and read some of our education materials.
Super, super cool. All right. Republic just acquired SheWorx.
Yes.
First off, let's talk about what SheWorx is. So lay the ground foundation for us for the rest of the conversation here about what SheWorx is and how that folds into what Republic's building.
Sure. So SheWorx is a global female founder community of around 20,000 female founders.
Oh, wow. So it's a big network. It's not just something very small. It's something substantial.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've acquired SheWorx for a few reasons. One is because when Republic launched, we launched with sort of a very mission-driven approach, which was we started out saying we want to back founders that have a mission-driven business that are building a profitable business, but also driving change in the world. And we continue to do that. We've broadened our mandate as it relates to companies on our platform. But the other thing that we did was we said we want to make sure we're democratizing access to capital to all founders, wherever they're located. So we wanted to make sure our platform was diverse along the lines of geography, so backing non-coastal founders, as well as trying to ameliorate the funding gap that both female founders and underrepresented founders of color, Black or Latinx, face in terms of getting access to capital. And so with SheWorx, not only was this an opportunity to acquire a strong brand that was mission aligned in the fact that it was working to close the female funding gap. Yeah. But also it was a great brand, a great community to take under our wing and to continue adding value to the folks in that community. But also it's a great way for us to build a pipeline of female founders that could raise on our platform. So we were excited to see last year when I ran the numbers that over 40% of capital to date on the platform had gone to a company with a female founder. Oh, wow. Okay. On Republic. Exactly. And that's versus 12% last year for the traditional venture capital industry. Yeah. So our numbers are looking good. We're not finished. We have a long way to go, but we were excited to see that. And so what better way to ensure that we are making sure that we achieve parity as it relates to female founders and access to capital on our platform than to have a pipeline of female founders through this community that we could expose to Raise on Republic and all of our various capital sources that we've built in our ecosystem. Yeah. So you may know we have Republic Labs as well, which is our institutional investor arm. So we at Republic can support founders all the way from kind of pre-seed, seed, up through beyond Series A and B through regulation crowdfunding, as well as Republic Labs, our institutional investor arm. We also have worked with blockchain projects to raise pre-token sales, which is a form of a debt crowd raise. And so that's why we acquired SheWorx. It was for those reasons, which is it was mission aligned, an incredibly strong brand. It was a strong brand for us to continue on and continue that community, and then a pipeline for us for our business to raise capital.
All right, so I'm just gonna put this out there as a foundation for the rest of the conversation. In America, we have a big problem, and the big problem is bias. Yeah. Definitely. And we all have, whatever camp you're in, we all have bias. We all have preconceptions of what is reality, what isn't reality, our conditioned thought, our process for doing that. And to start a conversation that's honest and true, we have to be aware and say, yes, I am biased in my thought, no matter who you are.
Yes.
And so I want to go into this conversation with saying, I understand different sides of the argument, or discussion. Discussion's a better word here, of, well, if you're so focused on one thing, you forget another group and all of that. Tell us why we need to be more intentional about opening up the doors of investing in places that have been forgotten or missed. And I guess a better way to say that is, because of the bias and because of our experience and because of the culture we live in, we don't even realize that there are spaces that are missing at times. So talk to us a little bit about those pockets and what's going on that we might not be seeing because we are in our own little bubbles.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I think we're all biased. Every single one. It's human nature. All of us have different biases. And I think one bias that I think is prevalent in the industry is affinity bias. So you want to back what you're familiar with. And so I think that's how we've kind of come to...
I want to stop there for a second. And when you say affinity,
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Affinity bias.
So what are markers of that? How can we notice when that's happening? Is it a matter of like, I invest into people that look like me, or is it things that I'm interested in? Like, what does that look like or mean?
It can be all of the above. So, when you may have experienced this too, and back, in early in your career when you had maybe career coaching or whatever, and the coaches always talk about, on your resume, put something interesting in the bottom line under like interests or passion, like horseback riding, or I love to play poker, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And they say that because they would, and at least in my experience, they would say you never know what common interests you have with that interviewer that can then break the ice immediately, because all of a sudden you have this common ground. Yeah. That's just human nature to want to find a common ground.
Okay.
And so it's things like, oh, where are you from? Or, where'd you go to school? All these things that help us find a common ground. So that's totally natural. It's human nature.
Okay.
But I do think if you look at the landscape of investors, it's predominantly men, and, men, I assume, that have gone to Ivy League schools, because when you think about the startups that are getting backed, they're mostly men that have been to like Stanford or Harvard, like in terms of, you look at like small, like and it's like, it's obviously there's so much more talent beyond that across the country. And so I think it's just, in the decision makers, it's predominantly men. So therefore you probably gravitate towards men that are like you. And I think and you see that in a variety of places. So for example, I believe Fortune just came out with an article about how there are more female CEOs in the Fortune 500 now than ever, due to the fact that boards of corporations are more diverse now than ever, have more women.
Okay.
And so women who are on the boards in general, make decisions about who the CEO is. So if there are more women, they're probably going to they're attributing that diversity of the board to to more women being CEOs. Because it's just, if you have those people who are decision makers that can empathize with your situation, maybe you're a working mother or whatever it is, you can kind of see the trend there. So similarly, I think only 8% of check writers in the venture capital industry are women.
Wow.
Only 8%.
Wow.
So, and then you look at the numbers around female founders, it's around 12% of capital has gone to a company with a female founder. So that those are kind of male and female. It's kind of diverse teams. And the number drops down to like 2 or 3% when it's a female CEO. Okay. So it's, some people say, oh, well, you can't draw the exact correlation, but if it kind of makes sense that if the decision makers, if the people that are writing checks, if that group isn't diverse, then how could the actual startups and founders that get backed be diverse? Because at the early stage, especially, you're really just investing in a founder and their story and them. There's not a ton of metrics that you can kind of hang your hat on at that early stage. So I think there is a connection there. So I think, platforms like Republic are exciting because it's allowing everybody to become an angel investor in a lot of ways, regardless of your accreditation status. So now all of a sudden, you can access a large and diverse group of people to invest in your company through platforms like Republic. But I think going back to your original question around, how do we think past this? One way is through looking at the business case for investing in a diverse founding team.
Yeah.
And so First Storm Capital did an analysis of their portfolio a few years ago, and they found that, I'm going to misquote the numbers, but so I'll just say that the highest performing in terms of return to their portfolio companies were companies that had at least one female founder.
Oh, wow.
So, and so that's one metric. The other metric I like to talk about is this idea of, well, if you think about the purchasing power that women collectively kind of control in this country, first of all, they control the majority of the purchasing power. There different numbers quote different stats, but it's around 8 to 10 trillion.
Okay.
In consumer spending that women control.
Yeah.
Because if you think about women, they're oftentimes the head of the household. If not in terms of the primary breadwinner, they're making all the financial decisions.
Right.
So how do you think about if there's, let's say, if you think about products and services that are marketed towards women, that's an investment opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's so many exciting startups nowadays that we see being run by women. So for example, FabFit Fund, which is a women-led startup based out of LA where they're selling subscription boxes for women, targeted to women, and I think they're on track to I forget if they've achieved unicorn status yet, but anyway they're one of the most innovative companies by Fast Company, things like that. I think there's so many other examples. Mirror is a device, I think an IoT device, a workout device led by a woman CEO, and they're on the fast track. They're growing super fast. What other exciting companies are out there? Rent the Runway is another great example of a company founded by women to solve a problem that maybe only women or mostly women can empathize with, which is I don't want to acquire more clothes, but I also don't want to be seen wearing the same thing over and over again on social media. So Rent the Runway just achieved, unicorn status recently. And so you just think about all these exciting, investable, backable companies that are fast growing, targeting this demographic that is 50% of the population, that controls 90% of consumer spending. And so it kind of gets you there. If you're not there already, let's say you're a man, you're like, can't really empathize with this experience of wanting to look different and different, have different pictures with different clothes on. I can't really empathize with that experience because for whatever reason, it doesn't resonate with me, but I can resonate with the fact that this is an amazing business opportunity. Yeah. So I think if we look at that similarly for example, like the Latinx community, they're one of the fastest growing demographics in this country. And they control, as of, I think last year, the year before, like 1.5 trillion in purchasing power. Yeah. So you think through like, okay, well, services and products marketed towards that community probably is a really exciting investment opportunity. And that's how I can kind of get behind it. Yeah. And so I think just going back to the business case is a great way to kind of level the playing field and just trying to think through it in that way. And oftentimes, again, if you're an investor, and you may not understand an opportunity, but potentially, and it's the same thing with products targeted towards, millennials or Gen Z, you probably want someone from that perspective who can understand and kind of educate you. So it's like, I think building out more diverse investment teams is a great way to where everyone wins, because you find exciting opportunities that you may be overlooking because you just don't have that experience. And the founders win as well because they get capital for their business. So
So we're running out of time here, and there's so many questions we could have, so many conversations. I think I want to wrap up this conversation with asking this. There are different kinds of obstacles for founders. Sometimes it's diversity issues, whether it's I'm a woman founder, it's harder to get funding, I'm a specific race and I have problem attracting funding because of that. It could be geographical. I'm not from San Francisco. I'm not from New York. Recently, I worked for years with startups in Silicon Valley as a developer, developing out prototypes for them. And recently I was able to go across the country on a road trip and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs along the way, talk to a lot of business owners, talk to a lot of people with really cool ideas. And they don't feel like it's possible because of the location. So there are all these different obstacles to finding the breakthrough that they're longing for. So if you're talking to a founder and they're saying, hey, I'm a woman, or hey, I'm a minority in this case, or hey, I'm bound by location, and I don't know how to really take the idea and get it to a place where it's marketable, where it's real, where we can actually make it tangible. What are maybe 2 or 3 tips that you would say, these are steps you can take right now that will overcome these obstacles, whether it's a specific thing because of your demographic or location, or maybe an obstacle that I haven't listed? What are a couple steps that they could take right now to overcome that and say, you know what, I'm going to use, and you wrote about this, about using you're different to really use that as a power. So tell us about that.
Sure. I think a couple of ideas which I think can be leveraged regardless of the founder's background or their experience. At the end of the day, bring it back to the business. Why are you starting this company? Why do you think that there's demand for this? And how can you quickly, without a lot of capital expenditure, test if there is demand for this product in the market or service, and establish those points of traction so that you become attractive to any investor, regardless of if they're looking for women or men or whatever. So a couple of concrete steps to take. Well, first of all, I think what you're alluding to is more the, how do I overcome my difference? And maybe that's holding me back, right? But I think that has to do with the confidence gap, which is very real, which a lot of women face, is this confidence gap. That's more the kind of mental, emotional hurdle of I'm different. I just, investors aren't taking me seriously. I look too young. I'm a woman, whatever it is. My last name's different, whatever it be. I think that's the confidence gap, which is, I think, something, we all face. And so I think when a tip for that is always, trying to look for stories and role models of people that have done it successfully and latch onto those. And they don't have to be from your industry. It can be a singer. It can be, your favorite artist. It can be anyone, a novelist that you love, and use them for inspiration. And I think also thinking through how can you kind of visualize them and visualize your own success in them, is at least helpful for me. So getting over that confidence gap to say, if you're a woman or a minority, yes, you may face hurdles, or if you're based in Columbus, Ohio versus Silicon Valley, you may face hurdles, but what are your assets? And use those, you focus on those instead of sort of what makes you different, but also think about that role model. Again, whoever it is, and visualize that person. Think about what they've been through, what they had to overcome to get to where they are, and use that as inspiration. So that's the confidence gap. I think when it comes to the business of what can I do, I don't have all the capital at my hands. Yeah. Well, so depending on what the business is, if it's a product, if it's a service, you can do different things to kind of hack at that to understand if there's really product market fit. So things like, if you're a product or CPG company or something like that, for example, you can do a Kickstarter, test the demand out there, see if the crowd resonates with your product or service. I think it's super low cost to throw up a Kickstarter campaign and test it out, to really figure out if you have something there. I think, for example, for women, there's a great crowdfunding site for cash called I Fund Women.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's
That's
a fantastic
really cool.
one. Exactly. Karen Kahn's the CEO. Where she's a partner of Republic's, and we share deals back and forth. But again, if you're a co-working space, if you're whatever you are, you can raise from the crowd, raising your community, and see if there's demand in that sense. And then if you're ready to take the next step beyond that, if you have that traction, I think one of the most important things to do, and this is another tip regardless of your background, is to build an advisory board. Okay. So you might be in Columbus, Ohio, and you might be saying to yourself, oh my goodness, I just lack access to all these great networks. Figure out what expertise you need to grow your company. And you may or may not get capital from let's say those folks necessarily. Let's say they're executives and they're angel investors and they're not ready to give you capital. Ask them to join your advisory board for a small percent of equity. Okay. And build out an advisory board. Usually it's around 0.25% that you give advisors. That can help you in growing your business in terms of fulfilling maybe aspects of your team that you don't have yet, you can't afford to bring on in-house, but you can tap into this network of experts and advisors and do that as soon as possible, because then again, that'll ensure that you are able to get to the next level, whereby you might be attractive candidate to get investment from a VC in Columbus, Ohio, or Silicon Valley, or New York, or wherever. But the point is, at the end of the day, in order to ensure your business success, you have to ensure that there's a product that or demand for whatever you're offering, and ensure that you have the expertise that you need and the team you need, even if it's through advisors, to get to that next level.
Super, super cool. We're going to take a break right here, and we'll be right back with rapid fire questions with Bianca.
Awesome.
Have you ever wondered what we're passionate about? What makes Jumblethink tick? Well, it's very simple. We have a belief that all of us were created for something awesome, that we have purpose, that we have destinies ahead of us. For many, they choose to sell out to the fear, the obstacles, or the unknown, and choose to never step into the full potential, the dreams and ideas that they were created to do. So here at Jumblethink, we are passionate about one thing: helping people figure out who they are, what they're good at, and how they can launch into the dreams and ideas that they have. One of the ways we do that is through this podcast, and we would love to connect with your friends, your family members, your coworkers, your boss, whoever it is in your life that you think, you know what, they have dreams and ideas that they're always talking about, and they're waiting for one day, they're waiting for someday. And that's where you come in. We need your help. We want to share this message with more and more people. And the best way to do that is through people who listen, sharing it with their friends, their family, their coworkers. So today, think about one person that you can share Jumblethink with. Maybe it's this episode. Maybe it's your favorite episode. But go and let them know about Jumblethink today. Or if you're really adventurous, share it on your social media channels. Pick your favorite episode and let the world know how Jumblethink's impacted you. Thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me that you would take time out to listen to our show. And we are honored that you would take a moment just now to share this episode, to share our show with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Now let's jump back into our conversation with today's guest, Bianca Caban.
Votre électrophone à portée de votre main. Levez seulement le bras pour mettre l'aiguille.
We are back with Bianca. All right, it's that time in the show where we do rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
One tip I would give it. So I would say figure out the best thing to do next, meaning don't worry about the 2, 5, 10-year plan. Figure out with a combination of, mentors and also your gut, what is the right best next move to get to where you want to go. And it can be something like acquiring a random skill or delving into an industry, but just get going with the next best thing. Don't worry about the 5-year plan. What's one change you'd like to see in the world? That's a great question. I would like to see, for one thing, obviously we've talked a lot about getting to parity as it relates to female founders in terms of access to capital, but also unrelated to tech, well, maybe a little bit related, is I would like to see more companies establish maternity leave policies, but also paternity leave policies, and have more dads take paternity leave, because that will help everyone at the end of the day.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I would like my legacy to be where I have at scale provided mentorship, knowledge, education as to the business fundraising process, both at early stage and more growth stage companies, to as many founders as possible, and to be known as someone that has given back along the way.
What is one book you think every entrepreneur or dreamer should read?
Very interesting question. I would have to say The Lean Startup Method.
Okay. Good book. Very good book. How do you define success?
I define success in how many people will speak positively about you when you're not in the room, in terms of both your personal and professional impact on them. We are in one of the trend-setting cities of the world. So what is one trend that you're currently excited about? I think a trend, it can be any trend, both anything you want. Boy, that's a big bucket. What trend am I excited about? I would say I'm excited about a trend I'm seeing in the evolution and proliferation of many, many companies around female health. Okay. Because I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, that women are such an important part of the economy. They're the primary breadwinners often of their families, or they make all the decisions. So if they're not healthy, we're in very, very bad shape. And so there's so many amazing femtech companies evolving around female health. I'm actually an advisor to one. It's called Lilu. They're a breast pump for the modern breastfeeding mother. So I'm excited about that trend. I think a lot is happening around that here in New York City. And one of our partners actually at Republic is called HIT Lab, and they do a competition around femtech and women's health tech. They just had one in May. So I'm excited about that trend.
And our final rapid fire question, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
One dream. Okay, so this is not really professional. Maybe it is. I would like to become a yoga instructor.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
And as we wrap up today's show, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought for our audience. So what's your final thought?
Well, I think the fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you are on the right track. I think if you're an entrepreneur out there, find all of the resources that are available to you, free and those that you may have to make a small investment in, to make sure that you have the knowledge and education you need to grow your business. I think knowledge is power, and that's one of the biggest gaps that we need to close. So congrats for listening to this podcast, and feel free to reach out if you have any further questions for me.
Bianca, thanks so much for being on the show with us today. And we're excited what you're doing, and we're excited about Republic and SheWorx. So keep doing amazing, amazing things.
Thank you so much, Mike.
In a moment, we'll be back to wrap up today's show. Wow, what a fun conversation with Bianca Caban. And for me, it's kind of funny because this brings together two worlds that we've been swimming in lately. If you've noticed, we haven't done a topical episode in a while. And it really boils down to one thing. I love doing topical episodes. They are a lot of work because we have to do the research. By we, I mean me. I have to put together the narrative. I have to plan what we're saying, what I'm saying. And I miss doing them. But there's a simple reason why we haven't done them in a while. And it comes down to this. Because of Podcast Row and then our relationship with Republic and friendship there, we've had a lot of guests booked for our show in the last 3 months. And then this Monday, I'm going back to Podcast Row to interview 5 more entrepreneurs for upcoming episodes. So why does this matter? Why is this important? As I reflected on our friendship with Republic, our involvement in Podcast Row, one common thread keeps coming up in conversations, whether it's an entrepreneur that is involved in those organizations and events, or there are people that come in through other channels. And that is the power of the people around you. As a person with dreams and ideas, often we are visionaries. We are filled with the future and wanting to get to the future and wanting to create the future. Our dreams and ideas can be pushed forward by the people around us or hindered by the crowd we hang out with. Often we need to be more intentional about the people we swim with. By that I mean the people we hang with, the people that we do business with, the people we talk about our struggles with. We need to choose wisely, especially as people who are outliers in community and culture. Many of us feel like we're on the fringes because we are moving towards a future that doesn't exist, or creating a new alternative to the realities that do exist. Solutions to problems, products to serve our customers, messages that change the world around us. And in that, we quickly become isolated. And I've talked about this time and time again, but I'm reminded that it's time to come back and talk a little bit more about it, and that's why I'm taking the last few minutes of today's show to talk about that. Isolation is the death march of entrepreneurship. And truly, isolation is the death march of life. We are created to be in relationship with each other. Whether you believe it or not, if you look at the beginning of the Bible, God created man for relationship with him. And yet it wasn't good enough. So God created woman so that there would be an intimacy of relationship and friendship and a journey together going somewhere. So if you look at the foundation of history, if you believe that story, which I do, and if you don't believe it, it's a story that can really bring us back to the roots of humanity, whether you think it was created or evolved from an amoeba, that we are better in create community, because in community we create new life through children. We create buildings that we live in. We create cultures and civilizations and products and services and messages and much, much more. So for us, as we are on this journey of entrepreneurship, we must be in relationship. We have to do this together. When we isolate, we become weakened. Now, I'm going to give you 3 quick reasons why you need community. Number 1, we need community because we need each other to encourage us. The journey of life is difficult. The journey of entrepreneurship, some would say, is even more difficult. We need encouragement. We all get discouraged. We don't always see the dreams and ideas we have come to reality in the way that we expect. And in that, we see failure, we see obstacles, and we see the unknown. And that unknown can sometimes scare us from creating and encountering a future that's not yet created. So we need that community for encouragement. When things are rough, we need that community to encourage us to keep going. When things are great, we need that community to encourage us to keep going further and pushing deeper into the unknown and creating new futures, new possibilities, new solutions to what's around us. So encouragement is one of the massive, significant reasons why we need community. Going one step further, we need community around us for accountability. If we are doing this alone, there is no one to call us up and say, "How you doing? What's going on? Have you gotten to your goal? Have you reached that milestone? Have you pushed into answering the questions that are holding you back? Have you, whatever it is, have you done it?" And they're going to hold you accountable. And when things get rough, they come in and they say, "I'm going to give you some benchmarks. I'm going to give you some places that you need to strive to hit." And they say, "I'm going to measure you." And so encouragement is the cheerleader. Accountability, though, is the measuring stick. Did you arrive to where you're going? And it's not about always succeeding. It's about being accountable. Well, you didn't make it. What do we need to adjust to grow for a new future? What do we need to do to pivot and solve the problems that we're now facing? That accountability brings us to a place where we can find the solutions to the problems, where we can find hope when we've given up. And so that accountability holds us to a standard. And I know that's not popular right now. We don't, as a society in America at least, don't want accountability. We want it my way, right away, the way I want. Who cares about anyone else? And that's really hurting our culture. It's really hurting the people around us. It's hurting the civilization that we are creating. So we need that accountability. We need to set a better standard for ourselves. And you can only do that in community. And the final reason that you need community is that when you have victories, when you have wins, when you arrive to the goal that you are going for, it's really sad to be there by yourself. You need community to celebrate together. You need community to be excited about the milestones, the goals, the akhirit, the end result of your actions. You need that community to celebrate together, because celebrating by yourself becomes very shallow because it's all about you. But when you have a crowd of people around you, whether it's your friends, your family, your team at the company you're building, when you celebrate together, there's a richness of being able to have perspective collectively instead of being by yourself, just going, well, what's next? You get to celebrate the victories. You get to celebrate the failures and continue to grow. And so community is that glue that binds us as humans, as individuals, as communities, as cities, as nations. It is that community. To me, this is one of the most significant messages we can be talking about, because our communities are fractured. It's us against them, me against you. And in that, we lose the power of being together. That doesn't mean we always agree. It doesn't mean that we always get along. What it does mean is that we say, we're in this together. I remember when I was going through premarital counseling with our pastor, and it was, of course, my wife now, Jennifer, and I. We were just engaged at the time, and he said, you want to know the secret to a marriage? And I would say, this applies also to community and the people around you. You want to know the success to being in relationship at all levels. He said it's simple. Put the needs of the other person ahead of yours. Love them more than you love them yourself. Now, we're not saying beat up on yourself so you make them better. What we're saying is that when you're doing awesome, encourage them to do even better than where you've been. Be their cheerleader. And when we choose to love the other person more than ourselves, when we say, it's your needs over my needs, it's what you need to succeed that I'm going to put as my benchmark. All of a sudden, if you have two people doing that for each other, you become a super couple. You become a super community. Because when we're watching out for the best of others, it allows us to launch into incredible possibilities. I think we need more of this. We need to love the other person more than ourselves. We need to have people around us that love us more than we love ourselves. And we need to be rooting for each other. The world is so divided. The world is so fractured. The world is so opposed to each other that we've lost community. Today, that's my challenge. In listening to our episode with Bianca, we can talk about minorities. We can talk about helping women excel in business and giving them the resources. All this has to come from a different place than what I think we've approached in the past. And that's to say, I want to see and truly love the people around me. I want to see the people that I don't understand and love them. I want to understand the things that are holding people back so that I can be a pedestal to lift them up, to give them a chance. We must push forward as a culture, as a society, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, to say we can do better than what we're doing today. I'm going to choose to do better by choosing to engage with people that scare me, people I don't understand, people who don't like me. I'm going to choose to step into those places and say, you know what? I want to love you well. I want to love the community around me well. And when we do that, when we build these communities where each of us are saying to each other, I love you and I want to do the best for you, how can you not win? How can you not succeed in business? So think about that today. What community are you building? What community and tribe is around you? And how is that helping you launch into the future you're supposed to create? Well, I would love to hear from you. What do you think about today's conversation with Bianca? What do you think about community? Drop us some notes on social media. Drop me an email, hello@jumblethink.com. I would love to hear what your thoughts about community are, what your thoughts about what Bianca was sharing earlier in the episode. Well, that does it for today's show. Once again, we want to thank Bianca from Republic and SheWorx for taking time out and sharing her story. We want to thank Podcast Row and Stand Up New York for hosting today's interview. We also want to thank our sponsors, Penji, your source for unlimited graphic design at a low monthly rate. Head on over to penji.co. Use the code JUMBLE for 15% off your first month. We also want to thank North American TEFL. If you want to teach English abroad, they're the place to go. Go check them out, NorthAmericanTEFL.com. And finally, we want to thank you for tuning into today's show. It means the world that you would take out some time out of your busy day to listen to our show. I hope it's encouraged you to chase those big ideas, to see the possibilities, and to create the world you want to live in. So get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Ôtez tous ce qui peut vous gêner ou tirer votre attention. Cherchez la meilleure position. Les bras et les jambes légèrement espacés. Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.